Live. You're listening to Live with Men, the podcast.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for always tuning in to the Men, the podcast. Another day, another session. We've been told in Tanzania it's safe now, but watu endelee kujiangalia na watu endelee kujilinda tu. Au vipi? This is Men, the podcast. Na kama unajua what we always say, kwamba we are discussing everything, but specifically about mental health, na tunazungumzia zaidi kwa wanaume. Na kama ambavyo tulikuwa tukisema kwenye kila station au kwenye kila episode ambayo tunafanya, ni kwamba tunazungumzia mental health kwa wanaume for a lot of reasons, lakini main reason ni kwamba tunajaribu kuunpack na kuunlearn what we've been taught as men, lakini vile vile kufanya watu wajue namna gani jamii na jinsi tunavyoishi na tunavyokuwa na tulivyo wanaume wa Kitanzania, ni kwa namna gani baadhi ya vitu ambavyo vinatuzunguka vinaweza kuwa na impact kubwa sana kwetu, especially mentally. That is why we are doing Men, the podcast. Kama unataka kutuambia kitu, unaweza kutupata either Twitter au Instagram @Men the podcast, both kwenye Twitter na kwenye Instagram. Nadia is here. Nadia.
Yes. Hey everybody.
Tunakudai bia. Yeah, Nadia is a therapist / counselor / mwalimu / yoga teacher / mambo kibao anafanya, lakini kwenye Men the podcast tunakuangalia kwa sababu she's a therapist, lakini pia ni mtaalam wa mambo ya mental health. Kwa ni mtu ambaye anaweza kaa na ni mtu ambaye mara nyingi anatupa professional perspective ya vitu ambavyo tunakuwa tunavizungumzia. Na kama unataka kuwasiliana na Nadia, if you feel like you need therapist to kuongea naye, feel like unahitaji mtu wa sekta hiyo kuzungumza naye, you can reach Nadia either on Twitter or Instagram kupitia account ya Mind Matters TZ, and then moja kwa moja utaenda kwenye bio yake, kuna link itakupeleka kwenye website ya page yake, and then there utapata njia kibao za kuweza kuwasiliana naye. So it's so good. Leo bwana, we are joined with I've known this guy for a while now. And he's one of those, I would say, unique beings, I would say. Ni mmoja kati ya watu fulani ambao ni unique sana. And ni katika watu ambao nime witness progress yao through social media. Progress mean growth through social media ever since I started following him a couple years ago. From only tweeting about football na kubisha kila kitu na nini, to being mtu ambaye siku hizi amekuwa reasonable, anasoma vitu, he breaks down things kiasi kwamba I'm like, who the hell is this guy? You know, who the hell is this guy? I'm talking about President wa Tanzania on Twitter. By the way, Nadia, if you're on Twitter, you should know this guy. He's our president on Twitter.
Yeah? Well, Michael, you know that I'm like a newborn on Twitter. I'm still finding my feet.
Yes, now I'm telling you the people you should know. Ricky Boshe is one of those guys you should know.
Okay. I am on
Ricky.
it.
Yep.
How are you, man?
I'm good, Mike. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute, man. Toko umeenda Ujerumani. I'm like, kwanza, what are you doing in Germany? Just kuweka mambo sawa. Unasoma, unafanya kazi, au unabishana?
It's a little bit of both, actually. I'm studying here in nasoma kwa karibia miaka mitatu saizi, doing my masters. But I'm also working because they're allowed to do working student hapa. I'm working and studying at the same time.
Yeah, na niliona juzi umeandika something about you want to do your PhD as well.
Kama ulivyosema, Corona has messed up a lot of things. Biashara nyingi zimepinduka. Mimi nina bahati kwamba nafanya kazi kwenye kampuni ya e-commerce, kwa hiyo the world is going down, we are going up. So nimeamua kwamba might be a good time to go back to school and get another degree or something.
Mzee, hongera sana. Mimi am done with school. Sasa hivi focus yangu na shule ni kwa wale mabinti tu ninaowalea nyumbani, ila mimi I am done.
Kila laheri.
Done kabisa. So yeah, we are with Ricky today na tunazungumzia topic moja ambayo ni sensitive kidogo, na ni topic ambayo we've been thinking about kuiongelea kwa muda mrefu sana, kwa sababu hate it or love it or tupende tuspende, ni moja kati ya vitu ambavyo vinatu impact sana wanaume. Mimi personally growing up, I always looked up to my dad, and watu wengi wanajua, au watu ambao wanajua kwamba nikianzaga kumwongelea mzee wangu, for me Mzee Baruti he's a man's man kwangu mimi, yani it doesn't get bigger than that, it doesn't get better than that. He is yani kipimo cha wanaume kwangu mimi, it is that guy, So naelewa umuhimu wa kuwa na father figure na umuhimu wa kuwa na male figure, lakini umuhimu wa kuwa na baba kabisa kwenye maisha yako, sababu naona kabisa mchango wake kwenye maisha yangu. So a couple of days ago, Ricky, you tweeted something ambacho kama watu hawakuona, watu ambao hawako Twitter wanatusikiza, they don't know. We will play it here as well. Tutaiweka kwenye podcast pia isikike. Lakini ilikuwa ni dialogue kutoka kwenye The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Sikumbuki ilikuwa season gani, lakini I think ni the most famous clip kutoka kwenye Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, ambapo Will Smith alikuwa anazungumzia baba yake kwa ameondoka, kwa he was talking to Uncle Phil. Rest in peace to James Avery. So he was talking to Uncle Phil kwamba baba ameondoka, he's let me down so many times. Of course, not in this exact words, like he's let me down so many times, but I've made it here without him, so I'll still, anybody doesn't kaendelea kuishi even baada yake kuwa ameondoka. So in case you don't know, this is the clip.
I'm sorry, Will.
You know what? Actually, this works out better for me. You know, the Slimmies of summer come to class wearing next to nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's all right to be angry.
Hey, why should I be mad? I'm saying, at least he said goodbye this time. I just wish I hadn't wasted my money buying this stupid present.
I'm sorry. If there was something that I
Hey,
could
you know
do.
what? You ain't got to do nothing, Uncle Phil. Hey, ain't like I'm still 5 years old, you know? Ain't like I'm gonna be sitting up every night asking my mom, when's Daddy coming home, you know? Who needs him? Hey, he wasn't there to teach me how to shoot my first basket, but I learned, didn't I? Hey, I got pretty damn good at it too, didn't I, Uncle Phil?
You did.
Got through my first date without him, right? I learned how to drive. I learned how to shave. I learned how to fight without him. I had 14 great birthdays without him. He never even sent me a damn card. To hell with him! I ain't need him then, and I don't need him now.
Will.
Nah, you know what, Uncle Phil? I'm gonna get through college without him. I'm gonna get a great job without him. I'm gonna marry me a beautiful honey, and I'm gonna have me a whole bunch of kids. I'm gonna be a better father than he ever was. And I sure as hell don't need him for that, because ain't a damn thing he could ever teach me about how to love my kids. How come he don't want me, man?
But Ricky, you tweeted kwamba as a kid that grew up with an estranged ran out of town father, this monologue by Will Smith hit me hard back in the days. It is the mantra I grew up reciting in my heart every day. So Ricky, take us back a little bit. Na tukiweza kuexpand kwenye that tweet zaidi. Unaweza ukatuambia what really how did that monologue speak to you?
You know, ukiwa mdogo, you sometimes kuna vitu huvi notice, unajua. I grew up in a family of 5 kids, right? I'm the first born male, lakini ni mtoto wa nne, unaona? Kwamba I have 3 older sisters, and I grew up around them, and my mom at that time was, hustling kuhakikisha kwamba watoto wote wanapata chakula, wanaenda shule, na we have the clothes behind our backs, Sasa kilichotokea ni kwamba ukiwa mdogo kuna utundu unafanya, unajua mama anakuchapa, unakasirika, and then you ask yourself like, yo, what's up, like baba yuko wapi, kwa nini inakuwa hivi? But you don't really understand what's going on, but unajua unasema nikilala nikiamka mambo yataendelea. But ilikuja katokea kwamba I was watching Fresh Prince, like, ile nostalgia, unaangalia episodes za nyuma, and then I saw that clip and it really hit me hard kwamba nikaanza kuelewa kwamba what was happening in my life ambacho sikuweza kutambua kipindi kile, and I really connected to what Will Smith was saying to Uncle Phil. I mean, I didn't have a male to say too, but in my heart I was like, you know what? If I had someone to tell it to, I would say it in the exact same words.
And if we take it back to the beginning, what do you remember growing up as a kid? I'm talking about male presence or male figure presence or male figure absence. What do you remember?
I think hii kitu inatokea kwamba kuna stage mbili. The first stage ni ukiwa at the situation, ukiwa mdogo. When I was 8, when I was 10, I was 9, I didn't notice much, Nilikuwa nasoma boarding school. Kwa nikienda boarding school, unajua kwamba unakaa boarding school and boys dorm, unasikiliza Professor J album and everything. Then unasikia other boys are talking about stuff you don't know about, Wanaongelea wasichana, wanaongelea, puberty, they're talking about masturbation. You're like, yo, what is all this? Because I grew up with sisters. Mi nikienda nyumbani all the time. My elder sister, much love to her. She used to be the strict hand of the family. Yeye ndo alikuwa anatukuza kipindi ambacho mama yeye yuko ana hustle in the office working hard to make sure she has enough money for all of us kids. My elder sister made sure that we grew up structured. Unaona ko, and mimi ile situation kwamba I never had that, the talk of a guy to guy, the upbringing of a man. Nilikuwa nikikaa na my sisters, we're listening to Spice Girls and everything. And that's why I grew up, Mike unajua, I grew up, I love pop more than I love hip hop, right?
Yeah,
so I just grew up with that influence. Yeah, so I grew up in that influence. So nilianza kwenda boarding school, ndio nianza kuona tofauti kwamba nakaa miezi na miezi na other boys, and my train of thought and my way of thinking is really, really different from them, right? And I went to boarding school, Tisnatisa, just turn of the century, and I think that was the first time kipindi ambacho African Cup of Nations inaanza, and we had the television. I was just cool to go on television pale inaekwa, and I used to watch football just in passing, but because other boys were going there, and I felt like if I don't go watch football, I wouldn't understand what's going on, right? So I needed to match up with what's going on in their lives to feel like I'm not missing out on being a boy. So ndo pale nianza kuangalia mpira kwamba kwa umakini, not just in passing, but kwa umakini. And I think my second sister, Patricia, which she's also in here, Germany, alianza ku notice, and that is when she even started. Alikuwa na jeans yake moja nakumbuka, alikuwa ameandika El Hadji Diouf, ameandika Thierry Henry, just to make sure kwamba anashabikia mpira. And I started loving football just because, my second sister was into football, and the rest of the boys now, so Manao, are into football. So I started noticing kwamba kuna kitu ninapelea while niko shule boarding, but I didn't notice what exactly it was. Nilikuwa nafuata tu mkumbo wa vijana wengine, but then nikiangalia kwamba when I reached adolescence, nimekuwa saizi, when I look back, this is the second thing now, when I look back and look at what did I miss at a certain age and at a certain time, I can see exactly what I missed. I can analyze what I missed, but at the same time, I tend to appreciate that my mom filled in the gap as much as she could, and she raised me to the boy that I am today. And shout out to my first sister, my second sister, and my third sister. But tulikuwa tunabishana kila siku, watoto wanaofuatana. Shout out to my sisters for raising me that way. I feel like I failed to impart this type of knowledge to my younger brother Pedro, because I didn't have anyone to teach me the boy to manhood, so I didn't have that knowledge to my younger brother. I didn't know what was right and what was wrong. By the time I figured out what was right and what was wrong, Pedro was already a man, so he was already a man at that time. So I missed out on that, imparting knowledge to my younger brother Kasabu. I feel like I missed out on the father figure, but at the same time, that gap, my mom filled it up and did even better than I expected. And I respect her for, doing things that my dad should have done. I mean, kuna vitu ambavyo alijaribu kuniongelesha. Sasa hivi nikikumbuka nasema Mungu wangu, why did I put my mom in such a situation where she had to take me through that? And that's basically it.
Yeah, and but before we and I understand what you're saying, especially kwenye swala la kuanza kujimix na the boys kwenda kuangalia mpira, and because as a kid growing up, all we knew is how to fit in. Yep. That is, as a kid, kazi yako kubwa ni hiyo, kwamba how do I fit in with you need that sense of belonging. And I think Nadia kama mtaalamu anaweza kaelezea zaidi hapa. But before we go that, Ricky, if you don't mind, that is, and if you think I'm pushing a little bit too far, let me know. Yeah. If you don't mind telling us, what do you remember about your father, and what really happened for him did he actually walk out, or things just he didn't walk out with mom, or he never, from your point of view, or you felt like he never played a part in like what happened for him not to play a part in your growth? Again, it's not about him. This is about you. But we just want to get the context of the whole situation. That is, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, like I said, like when I was young, when I was at that age, I had a lot of questions, and I was trying to nilikuwa najaribu kureason, kufikiria kama yeye kwa nini amefanya vile au nini kimetokea. But when I grew up I realized like, you know what, first of all, on the basis this man does not deserve my time of space, mimi kukaa na kwanza kumfikiria kwa nini kafanya vile. And then second, najiumiza mimi mwenyewe kujaribu kufigure out why a person did that. You know, I can never be him. I can never be in a situation kajua why he left and why he became, even when he left, he became, you know, hakuwepo katika maisha yangu, unaona. Kwa hiyo he left when I was very young. I don't even remember much about him. That is to show you that he left really when I was really young. That I don't even remember much of what happened and, you know, what was there. Only thing I remember was my mom was always there, and that's the biggest thing that I remember. And ukiniuliza after that, when nilipoanza kupata akili na kuelewa moja jumsha moja and whatnot, the only connection I had with my father, and this is a funny true story, right? Nimemaliza primary Arusha school, and I did fairly well, right? Kipindi kile kuchaguliwa shule za serikali was a huge thing, right?
It was a big deal.
Yeah, and I felt real good because I knew my mom was working real hard to make sure kwamba nasoma Arusha school. Kipindi hicho nakumbuka ada ilikuwa kama 150 per term, miezi mitatu, and that was huge money.
It's a lot of money.
Yes, a lot of money. Sasa nakumbuka anasomesha mimi, anasomesha my younger brother Arusha boarding school, and nikisikia kwamba nimechaguliwa shule ya serikali, which is hella cheap, right? Nimechaguliwa Sinoni secondary school, which is really cheap. I felt like nimemtuisha mama mzigo mkubwa sana kwamba naenda, unajua, normal secondary school ambayo ni rahisi. Sasa unajua my dad lives Moshi. Kwa hiyo Arusha na Moshi is on the way to Dar es Salaam, right? So I think my mom thought it was a good idea to, you know, pitia Moshi, salimie baba, tell him what you did, right? Like tell him like, you know, you did this. And I went through, right? And the funny thing was like, and this is the memory that I still have until today. I mean, it's something that I usually don't speak about, but it's something like he gave me a fucking football. Like, dude, I just graduated primary school, good grades, mingia secondary, and you're giving me a football, and it wasn't even a new football. It was like a used football, and I was like, what? And I was like, really? Like, and I was like, mpira. Na mpira ambao umetumika. And I'm like, na numeenda ndani Moshi. Kanipa mpira miguu. I don't even know what's going on right now. And I was like, you know, and I think that moment, that right there, when I got the football in my hand, that was when I realized, hey, on this journey of manhood, I am alone. Like, do not expect anything else, you know. And I said, thank you for the ball and, you know, being gracious and everything, Shima. Kasalibia, other extended family ambaye nakaa pale Moshi, and I bounced. And that was the last interaction that I had physically with him. And I said, like, from that day on, in this journey of manhood, that is it. Memaliza. Bas.
Wow. Okay, Modia. So that, as funny as it is, it explains your love for football on the other hand. It runs in the family. but unajua nafikiria, if Nadia, you remember the first episode we did on the podcast with Mark, kuna something he said, this is the guy, if you haven't listened to our first episode, you can always go back and listen to it. The guy said kwamba he was talking about jinsi gani ndoa yake ilikuwa na matatizo na nini, and of course na yeye pia alikuwa bila baba kwa muda mrefu sana. And he said one of the things ambavyo anahisi vilichangia ndoa yake kuto kufanikiwa au ndoa yake kuvunjika ni kwamba he never had a male figure to give him game in terms of how to be with women na nini, you know, just those things about we usually take for granted as boys, because even mimi siwezi kwenda kuongea na mama yangu labda mambo ya ndoa, any perspective ya mama kuhusu mambo ya ndoa inaweza kuwa tofauti sana na perspective ya baba, you know. And as a man, you of course you need them both, but you as a man you need the man's perspective ambayo inaweza kukwambia, Mike, you know what, don't worry about this, don't panic, these things happen, this is how we resolve it, na vitu kama hivyo. So he never had that, na so because of that hakujua how to deal with some situations. Now listening to what Ricky is saying, I can actually feel the connection between these two in terms of presence ya mwanaume kwenye nyumba. Nadia, what's your take on this?
So kama like nadhani we've discussed a bit of this in the previous episodes as well, is when kama mtu, especially kids, tukiwa tunakuwa, we tend to look at our role models, our first role models, our template, to kind of direct us, guide us on how to conduct ourselves, behave, and be. We usually look up to our parents, and it's usually the same-sex parent. Now, we tend to identify with either our fathers, or we look up to, let's say for young boys, it's the father who is generally the template of this is what a man should be like, this is what a man does, and etc. And then once they're older, then you learn for yourself, because a lot of fathers are not perfect. So sometimes unapata templates zilizokuwa nzuri sana. So it's really important kuwa na male figure. Na pia when you look at it, a lot of research is pointing towards fathers being a really strong predictor or a really strong force when it comes to children, not just boys, but girls, men and women as well. The father figure is one of the figures that helps us develop our emotional intelligence, our emotional capacities. And overall intelligence, let's just talk in that manner. So Baba, they play a really important role. I'm curious to know, Frederick, who for you was that male figure? So I know that it sounds like your mom tried to play both roles. And from what you've shared so far, from what I've heard, she's played them very well. Like she's managed to balance those two roles quite well. But I'm curious to know, was there ever any other male figure in your life growing up, aside from, I know you said boarding school, it was an all-boys school, so you got to interact with boys there as well. But I'm curious.
Actually, the boarding school is like male and female. I don't think I would have survived in an all-boys school. But
okay.
Facts only.
The truth is, I never had, like, first of all, like I told you, like when I was young, I didn't know what I was missing, right? I just knew I had so many questions. I didn't know what I was missing, so I didn't know the importance of having one, right? My mom was there, she was doing her best, and I didn't notice that she was going above and beyond. So I think nilivyoingia chuo, basically from 6 mpaka kuingia chuo, my second sister, she got married, right? And shemeji yangu, rest in peace, he was the one who was there. I mean, ilikuwa ikifika on Fridays, nakumbuka on Fridays, early morning, literally, I usually receive 2 texts. First message at that time was like my first sister, she was asking me to provide for her Vampire Diaries on a flash disk. Then I would go and provide it for her. And the second message used to be, shemeji yangu ananiambia, yo, nakuja kukuchukua jioni, tunaenda Tabata, we're going to chill. And I went there and I saw my sister and I saw how their marriage worked. And I saw my nephew come into this world. And I was like, yo, you know what? This is the perfect family. This is the picture perfect family growing up right in front of my eyes. So every weekend alikuwa anakuja kunichukua, and issue ikitokea, kwa mfano he's having issues or we talk about it. If I'm having issues, he calls me and ananitoa ananipeleka pale Calabash Tamwenge. We talk about it. Kubwa. So I was like, yo, this is what would this have been my life if I had, like, a father figure early on, like, taking me through my first, my first love, my first drink, my first, I don't know, whatever I did back then. And I was like, I was having this when I was like age 19, age 20, when I'd already done a lot of stuff wrongly, and I'd already been through a lot of stuff without any person there to guide me through it. So I came to have this father figure, this presence there, I would say, in and around the time that I went to university, and I was living outside of home, living by myself with friends, and this whole brave new world, and shemeji yangu ndio yuko pale anakuja every weekend kunichukua. So that dynamics and seeing how he was living with my sister and my nephew, that was like the first impression of like being present in a father figure setting, basically.
Kuna siku mtu mmoja aliniambia kwamba, you know what, Mike, I mean absence ya uni mtu mwingine pretty much the same story, lakini yeye ni kwamba naye pia he grew up, yeye baba aliwabandon na kila kitu, mzee akaendelea na maisha yake, so wenyewe amekuwa on their own. Akaambia kwamba growing up he ended up, even ilifikia point kwamba anaingia kwenye toxic relationships na watu, anakuwa clingy, anakuwa very clingy kwa akiwa yani he could not let people go, especially kwa kwenye relationship. It doesn't matter what wana mistreat vipi, for the fear of people actually walking out on him. Na alikuja kugundua hilo tatizo baada ya kuanza kwenda therapy. Yani ilifikia point akaanza kwenda kwenye therapy sessions na nini. Ndio akaanza kugundua, okay, wait a minute. So I'm like this because this person actually walked out on me. Unajua? So it had to reach that point ya wewe kuweza kugundua. Have you ever felt that somehow kwamba you are a certain way because now that you've done some introspection na umeweza kukaa na umejiangalia na the more you grow the more unavyozidi kujijua mtu. Have you ever felt kwamba somehow kuna vitu uweze kuentertain au kuna vitu you do not want to get attached yourself to because of absence ya huyu mtu?
Honestly, I like personally I think most of the, like from experience, I would say from a relationship point of view, some of my exes would say differently, obviously, but from an experience point of view, it's like I have had relationships where I felt like I literally felt like I would die without this person, like in terms of like, and I felt like that I reached a point where it was really dangerous personally for me, and thankfully for the other party, she realized it, and she was. I wouldn't use the word walk, but she was like, she knew what was going on and she wasn't afraid to speak about it. She told me like, yo, you should never let anyone else be the source of your happiness, right? You should never feel like you have a huge gap in your life that you need to find someone to fill it up for you. You need to accept yourself, find a way to amuse yourself before you go out and seek mtu mwingine kama mwenza wako, unajua. So I think that was the biggest turning point a few years ago. That was the biggest turning point in terms of my relationships with people. I think the only thing that hasn't changed is because, Michael, I'm not married, and like it's never been on the front of my mind to get married because I don't want to be in a relationship where either I'm forced or I feel like I have to walk out and I have to walk out on a child. I'll be like the most present parent ever. If I ever become a parent, I'll be the most present parent ever. Come hell or shine. Like even if it doesn't work out with my wife or whatever, my partner, I'll make sure I'm there for the first football game, the first dance she goes to, for example, our first recital, whatever. I'll be there for that child because I know it might not work out. Binadamu so kwamba mtapatana miaka yote milele. It's not guaranteed.
Forever it's not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed. But your blood, my blood, like 50% is there. That's an investment that I would never leave aside ever. So I think I'm in this situation whereby I think about it a lot. I want to be the most present parent ever. But it's just that situation. I will never remove myself from my child's life, whatever the situation, and that's it.
Come rain, come sun, tunasema. And shout out to that lady who told you about finding your own happiness. Sounds like you are dating Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yeah, she could have done a red table for me, but yeah.
Yeah, but Nadia, I wanna. This is something ambacho nataka kuongea naye. Ricky amekuwa very brave kuja na kuzungumzia experience yake, lakini tunajua a lot of people ambao either wamepitia similar situation, and in some cases, especially in African context, na tukija kuzungumzia sisi Tanzania, as wrong as it is kwa mzazi kutokumjali na kutokumwangalia mtoto wake, somehow we've come to normalize it. We know a lot of families ambazo a father walked out. Maybe they had issues na mama, so father walked out. Au maybe tu baba kwa mambo yake mwenyewe he decided to walk out na kuacha watoto wake. So wapo watoto ambao wamekuwa bila baba wengi tu. Tukizungumzia kwa watoto wa kiume moja, I would like to know from you what do you expect from what should we expect from such men? I'm glad what Ricky said. It's like for him, amechukua muda, evaluate. Now he knows exactly what he's gonna do and he knows what he's not gonna do. But then kumbuka, Ricky amesoma Arusha School. Ricky, he's in German right now. Ricky, he's exposed. He's seen things, And I believe if you know better, you do better. But then what happens kwenye familia zetu ambazo this thing tumeifanya imekuwa kama it's a normal thing? How do we deal with it?
Nadhani this us normalizing on one part, perhaps, I don't know, our systems, not just our family systems, but our government systems, our legal systems. We need to take this a bit more seriously. No one can stop a parent, or no one can stop anyone from walking out of our lives. That's one thing. If they decide to not be present, some fathers are present. Yuko hapo nyumbani, utamkuta anakuja kila siku, but they are not present. Do you guys get what I mean? Like they're absent, but they're physically there, but they're absent. And that's the other issue and it's a whole other dimension. So nadhani the most important thing is perhaps our legal systems, because we need to find a way. Yes, you can walk out. Yes, you can choose to not be present, but I think the one way that I think the rest of the world has managed to have them still at least be there, or their presence still be felt, is them being required to either contribute to the child's development, whether it's financially. Most of the times they don't focus a lot on emotionally, which is, I think, even more important than financially. So kama sisi hapa, naona a lot of, let's say, if we have a lot of fathers walking out of their families, ni kwa sababu there are no consequences to their actions. Now, it's become normalized kwa sababu it's easy. You can have a child with women, or you can be married and decide to cheat and marry another person and just spread your seed, because again, that's a statement that's been out there. It's kind of praised. Man, if you can spread your seed across the continent, it's been kind of looked at as something that's great, which, okay, maybe yes, but no. If you can't provide for all the seeds that you're planting, then I think you better not. Now, then if a consequence is introduced, it will discourage this behavior. When I do with anything with behavior, if it's entertained, if there are no consequences to your actions, then it persists. Utaendelea, and it will not just be, you will not just walk out of one family. If it's a habit, you'll probably walk out of 2 or 3 families. The impact, the implication it has is huge on the people that you're leaving behind. I'm not sure how they feel moving on, but a lot of the times it's the children that get the tough hand there, because you have to now grow up justifying. Because a lot of kids growing up with households that are either one of the parents has walked out, the children learn to overcompensate. So you find that the children try to overcompensate so that they can support the remaining caregiver, so that the caregiver does not feel that they're incompetent. When you're very intelligent children, God bless them. It's like extremely resilient. And even though situations that they're in are extremely crucial and can be extremely difficult and frustrating and tough, they still are quite resilient. And decades research is pointing out that children in single parent households almost always overcompensate. They will, like Frederick, you mentioned your sister took up a certain role as well, that she also was there and made sure that you were all in check when your mother was away. That's an example of a child overcompensating. Because yes, it's a great trait, but no child should be put in such a position, and your mom did not ask her to do that. It probably was a huge help. She was a support to you all, but imagine what that does to your childhood. You have to kind of grow up before your time. So nadhani as a society inabidi tuanze introduce some form of not punishment per se, but there needs to be a consequence for
people have to be accountable.
Exactly. That's the exact word. We need to be accountable for whatever reason your dad walked out of the family for. His reasons are valid. We do not know them. At least I do not know them. But when you're in that position, when you're a parent and you're bringing life, you need to be a bit more accountable. You need to take a bit more responsibility. And as you said, marriages can end. Divorces happen. You can separate. Lakini, you still both parents are still responsible for the children that they bring into the world. So I don't know how we can introduce consequences to people's actions, because that's one of the ways to discourage such a behavior.
Yeah, I wanna ask Frederick. With Frederick sounds so weird. So Frederick, Ricky. Sorry. And I know this is something that I'm one of the reasons I know this episode will resonate with a lot of people is because apart from you being a man now, grew up without a father figure, I also know a couple of ladies about Pia, baba zao actually walked, and one of them baba alifariki, and nilikuwa naongea naye akaniambia, Michael, I literally feel nothing, you know. I know he's my dad, amefariki na vitu kama, but sikumjua na we never had any connection, so I feel nothing. I mean, am I weird for feeling that? Am I weird for not feeling anything? But because at the end of the day, he's still my father, you know. I did not know what to tell because Baba was like, I don't know. I mean, for her, it was just like, mtu mwingine yetu amefariki, you know. So na nikitaka kurudi kwenye point ya Nadia uliongea kusala ku overcompensate, ambapo Ricky ameongea kuhusu dada yake na vitu kama hivyo. But then I want to ask you, Ricky, personally, have you ever felt kwamba because my mom went through some stuff, I do not want her to go through the hustle again? Have you ever felt like there's something about doing kwamba ni overcompensate, maybe consciously or subconsciously? Kwamba you've been overcompensating for your mom right now that you're an adult.
So first of all, it's like so like when my dad walked out, he walked out when half of us, like me and my young brother, did not have our brains intact yet. We weren't, you know, so we don't remember anything. But my sisters grew up with him for a couple of years, so they have a good relationship with him, and that's good for them. I mean, they still talk to him, they still engage with him, and I mean, hey, that's their life. I mean, that's all good. Yeah. In terms of what I feel or what I do not feel, honestly, I feel less than nothing actually. Like whatever happens, I'm almost like I get information like either he got a job, or I don't know, he got something good happened in his life, something bad happened in his life. I'm indifferent to it. Like it doesn't affect me at all right now. And I don't find it weird because like, hey, he didn't invest anything emotionally into my life. Why would I invest anything emotionally into his life? So it doesn't make sense at all. And there's nothing there to invest. And when it comes to like my mom right now, I actually feel like I'm underperforming, I'm underachieving. If in an ideal world, I would like to be the way, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo treats his mom, buys an whole island or whatever for the mother, you know, right? I want to be that person. I want to be that person that like, your mom, you don't have to worry for a single penny. You don't have to worry for anything. Yeah, you know, like literally you've got it. You've got anything like from medicine to, you know, whatever. She wants to start a garden, shamba kubwa kabisa. I want to be in that situation. I feel like she did way too much. Like, Mike, if I tell like, do you know how hard it is to go through puberty and your mom has to talk you through that? Do you know how that is weird? Like you wake up one morning, so busy. You wake up the next morning, you have pubic hair, and you don't know what's going on in your life because at that stage, at the biology, and you don't have an older brother to tell you anything, and then your mom has to tell you this because your sisters is going to be weird for them to tell you this. So how do you put a woman who's been there for for all your life to start telling you intimate things? I'm grateful that my mom alisoma biology and she studied wildlife, so science is within her, like, you know, so she can talk me through it in a scientific way without. But saizi nikikumbuka naona aibu kwamba I had to, you know, sit with my mom and she had to take me through that dialogue. So I feel like I haven't achieved even half of what I'm supposed to achieve to you know, compensate for what my mom did, and that's the truth right now.
Did she give you did you get your first sex talk from her? Oh, you never got one,
bro. I got everything, fam. Like I got like you know, like they talk about the state of how men wake up in the morning, you know, to how your first love is. Like she went deep. She went scientifically deep, and I was like, whoa. At that time, I was like, okay, so this is what I'm supposed to learn. This is what I'm supposed to do, you know. And she was like, if you have any more questions, my door is always open. And at that time, I was like, oh wow. And then, but right now, when I'm remembering at that moment in my life, I was like, puberty.
You're like, shit.
I'm like, whoa, like no, haikutakiwa niongee na mama yangu vitu kama hivyo, unajua. Itakiwa hata, unajua, mjomba, kaka, someone awe pale kunielekeza vitu kama. But she did that. She never complained about it. She jumped on the gun and she was like, yo, njoo tuongee, unajua siku labda unachapwa, kumbe ni mtu anakukalisha na kuongelesha vitu vyote uzima. And I'm like, right, nikikumbuka alivyokuwa ananielezea, unapata aibu, unapata uoga kwamba your mom went there, but at the same time you appreciate kwamba she went above and beyond what she was supposed to do. So I feel like I haven't accomplished enough for her. Right?
Unajua, I have a little bit of an opposite experience on this. Ndo maana napokuja kuwa na hizi conversation, I try so much to tread carefully, because I think mimi I grew up with a very present father. And like mzee was super involved kwenye maisha yetu. And I have 3 brothers na dada mmoja. I have my little brother na kaka zangu wawili na dada mmoja. But mzee was super involved yani katika maisha yetu wote, katika maisha yetu wote. So I cannot really, but right now thinking of it, I cannot imagine maisha yangu angeturn off vipi kama asingekuwa present. Now because of that, I feel like ni wajibu wangu mimi kuwa present kwa watoto wangu, because my father was for me. So itakuwa very unfair kwa watoto wangu kama mimi nikiwa absent kwenye maisha. Ndio maana I also try, najitahidi sana kuwa involved kwenye maisha ya watoto wangu as much as I can, because for me it's like, it's the only way I know. It's the only way I know. And I like what Ricky said, kwamba he amesema kwamba to make sure kwamba if he ever becomes a parent, he makes sure kwamba he's always present kwenye maisha ya watoto wake. But coming to you, Nadia, do we feel like some aspect hivi tu inaachaga negative impact kwa watu in terms of connections, in terms of watu maybe could downplay the significance of family kwa watu wengine na vitu kama hivyo? Do you think that might happen as well? Oh, that happens as well.
It happens as well, but then it depends on. Everything is very holistic, and I like viewing things as a whole. You see, so utakuta some families, the father is absent or leaves, walks out, but perhaps the other parent that's remaining isn't also as present. So you have kids growing up in such a setting. Other environments, let's say like Frederick's, your mom was very present, and she played both the roles. She tried her best to play a father figure, a father's role, and a mother's role together. So in other households, you find the mother just plays the mother's role, and because the father has walked out, that father figure is not present at all, and it's not felt. So all those different scenarios create very different pictures overall at the end. And also the element of nilongelea, a role model. So here we're talking about a father walking out. So when children in a household where it's a single parent household and the father is not present, and there isn't a male figure, that can lead to a whole different picture. So the negative consequences, it's a possibility. It's not a given that all children growing up in a single parent household experience negative outcomes or there's a negative implication baadaye, but inategemea sasa the setting walokuwepo. Unajua inategemea the effort that the mother put in when it comes to child care, child rearing and parenting. It comes whether or not there was a male figure around. So it doesn't have to be a direct father, but it can be like an uncle figure, an older brother figure, a male figure that was in the community, someone prominent that you looked up to, a male figure in the church. So inategemea, like all these little bits and pieces that happen in our lives, these intricate details play a big role. Now, it's very possible to have negative implications, So now I like the fact that you talked about, I know Frederick said that if you were ever to become a father, you're going to be a present one, which is great. Don't be too present, because then, as kids, they like their freedom sometimes. I'm joking.
That's true.
But you find some fathers who will tell you their life story that their father was not there, the father abandoned them, and then they go and play out the same scenario. And that's a good pick. Like right there is where you can pinpoint and say, okay, this is where like it played out negatively. Because if that experience gets you to perpetuate similar experiences to other generations, then ujue kwamba hapo either you haven't worked through that loss, because losing a parent is a loss. And whether or not you care for them, whether or not you feel anything emotionally, there is a significant loss, a psychological loss even. And some people manage to, work through it, process through it. Wengine, they don't process through it. And that's when now unaanza to perpetuate the same cycle. When we talk about these cycles, these generational toxic cycles, that's where they're coming from.
The vicious cycle.
Yes, these vicious cycles are coming from, most of the times people have gone through pain that they have not dealt with. And so they just deal the same hand of pain to their next generation. And hapo you will find a lot of parents, a lot of fathers justify, mi babangu hakunifundisha vitu vyote, mi babangu did not do this for me. So, but I turned out perfect. So I'm doing you a favor. And that's how they make it sound. Wengine, and that's just an indication kwamba they did not process, they did not deal through the loss they face. And ukishafika as an adult, you can rationally think through the loss, but we need to keep in mind na inabidi tukumbuke and also give a lot of importance to the fact that the one who experienced the loss is not the adult you. Alo experience your loss is the child you. Yeah. So how have you helped that child version of yourself?
But Nadia, how do you distinguish that? And the human mind it's a very complex mind. How do you distinguish that ambaye babake alimpoteza ni Michael mdogo, so huyu Michael mkubwa sasa hivi? How?
Well, therapy.
More money to Nadia. Pay Nadia for this.
No, therapy is a great tool because there's a lot of different techniques that we can access our inner child. Our inner child is always there. Now, like me, I tend to look at adults as just big children. To me, adults, big kids that have now a lot of freedom to run around and do things on their own. As a child, there's people watching out for you, controlling your actions. But as an adult, you are more in control of yourself. So I tend to look at adults as just big kids with more freedom. So that inner child plays out in us. Like I'm sure, just observe yourself. There's a lot of things that we do that we will sometimes take a step back and be like, okay, that was a bit childish. This is our inner child coming out. And our inner child, as you said, it's a part of you. So it's not, you can't really separate that this is a child Michael, this is an adult Michael. You're both Michaels, but then these two coexist. And so when it comes to healing your inner child, you just simply access. And how do you access? You can just sit and kind of reflect, not think with your logical part, because you develop it from the age of 18. When you enter your teenage years is when your frontal lobes start to properly form. From the time you're born until your teen, the frontal lobes, that area of your brain that reasons and makes sense of things, is not present. It's something that's growing and molding and developing. Ukishakuwa adult, that's when it's solidified. It's the youngest part of our brains. And so ukikaa unataka access your inner child, you access the emotional side of yourself, and you can incite that through vision, imagery, thinking about, you can imagine your child version or your child self. However, that's why I say go through therapy, because if there's a lot of trauma, if there's a lot of loss that you experienced as a child, and you just access that on your own and take yourself back to that place, whatever comes out there can overwhelm you, And as kids, not just as kids, as humans, our brains are God bless our brains. They have a way of protecting us. So if there's any loss we experience that we didn't have the capacity to deal with as a child, our brain finds a way to mask it, shove it into the unconscious. So as an adult, you come and want to access that part of yourself, you need to really be quite cautious. Kwa sababu you do not, it's like a Pandora's box that you're opening. Because if it was such a huge loss that you did not process as a child, processing it as an adult, it will be a bit easier. But if it was such a heavy emotional load, it will take you quite a while to kind of digest through it all. And it will be more ideal to do it with someone who knows how to contain and how to support you through it. Because the minute you open that box, closing it and pretending like that pain was never there is difficult. So it's either you just leave that box alone, or you open it with caution and be ready to process, to work through whatever it is that comes out of there.
So you look at Ricky's situation is the father pretty much walked out when Ricky could, yani hakumbuki mapema sana. Mm-hmm. And then kuna wale wengine ambao anafika mpaka miaka 8, 9, 10 and then the father walks out. You know? How do both of these people, kwa sababu hizi ni different situations kabisa. Ukiangalia situation ya Ricky inalinganisha na what Trevor Noah said kwamba when Oprah asked him about him growing up poor, akasema well, everybody around us was poor. So how, if you don't know it, hujui kama you're poor. Yeah. So Ricky in Ricky's case ni kwamba baba hakuwepo toka akiwa mdogo, so probably he didn't even know the importance of having him around mpaka baadaye alipokuja kuwa mkubwa. Compared labda na kama baba angeondoka wakati Ricky is 8, is 9, is nani. Kwa hiyo nadhani there's a different level of traumas pia hapo Nadia. No, am I right?
Well,
or it is pretty much the same thing.
Again, it's contextual, but it's pretty much the same. Okay, let's take Trevor's example. Growing up in poverty, we're all here, but poverty will affect us regardless. People living in poverty, their health is not as great, their opportunities are not as great either. So there are these factors that, yes, we probably not consider them because we're in this mess, so we don't know any better. But kuna these fundamental things that happen, whether or not we acknowledge them or not. And it's the same with a parent being absent, an absent parent. Whether the parent leaves before you were born, whether they leave after you've turned 18, the pain is the same. It's just that your processing of the pain will be different. Your approach to dealing with that situation ndio itakuwa tofauti. Lakini yale maumivu yanabaki pale pale. It's still, loss is loss. Whether you lose someone when you are a child or whether you lose them when you are much older, doesn't really take away from the fact that you've lost something. Now, that's kind of the case as well. When a parent walks out, even when you know the reason why they're walking out, it still doesn't make it easy. I think the implication, the pain, the magnitude of that loss remains the same. Ila tu our levels of processing zinabadilika. And the environment we're in that will influence also our outcomes, and how much it will affect us.
Ricky, as we are winding this up, yeah. If there is one thing above you would like to, if you get a chance to talk to your old man, if there's one thing I would talk to him, what would that be?
It wouldn't be like. I honestly, Mike, I really don't have much to talk about with him. It would just be one thing, like why the football. Like really, like in your house, like you could have given me money.
Yeah.
Najua ni mchaga ndio, like you could have given me money. Like why the football though? Like that was such a pivotal moment in my life. Metaphorically, nikikumbuka like football, like it doesn't even relate to my education.
Has that impacted your love towards football in any shape, form, or way?
Nah, fam. Like honestly, the person who actually made me love football so much was my second sister. I still remember jinsi yake ameandika El Hadji Diouf, Thierry Henry. Yeah. She made me love football because she was crazy about it then. And, being around boys at that time, watching football, Africa Cup of Nations and the World Cup 2002, that made me love football a lot. But my dad was just like, it was just a weird moment of him giving me a football. I was just asking like, why the football though? Like, what's up? So that's the only thing I would ask actually.
And that's a great question. I think you should, hey? You should definitely ask him. Because
don't worry,
Closure? For closure, Nadia? For closure?
No, I mean, imagine there's something very symbolic about that football. Okay, disclosure. Maybe it will disappoint you, the response. It'll just be like, well, that was the only thing I'm
not even expecting anything. I just want to know, like what was his train of thought at that time? Like, a football, like, what's up? Yeah. Like, hey, I just want to know, like, what just curious about it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think find out, and you should share it with your Twitter family. I'm gonna start following you now.
Yeah, and another thing, Ricky, for this is on a serious note, for people ambao their fathers walked out and they've had to do it on their own with their mothers. If there's one thing ambao ukitaka kuambia, especially for men, it is about, as you know, men, the podcast it is about men. So especially for men or young boys, watu wanaokuwa wapwa, mabro, na wote ambao watasikiliza. If there's ambao either fathers walked out, they didn't grow up without father figures, they didn't grow up with no male figures na vitu kama hivyo. Based on your own personal experience and where you are right now and how you turn out to be na unavyoona maisha yako. If there's kitu nachotaka kuambia, what would that be? If there's one thing or two or three or four or 10 things unavyotaka kuambia about your experience na growth, what is one thing ambavyo ungetaka wafahamu na wajue, au one thing ambavyo ungetaka washikilie kwenye based on your personal experience kwenye hili?
I wish that this episode would be listened to the people who really need it. And to me personally, it would be kids that are literally going through it right now, rather than people who are grown up like 21, 22, who have, been past it. I mean, like Nadia said, they need to deal with it. Ukishakuwa mkubwa, you need to open that box and deal with it step by step and realize what went wrong. But I feel like the kids going through it right now, the way I was back then, I needed someone. I didn't even need someone to. Yes, I needed someone to guide me through going from boyhood to teenagehood to adulthood. Yes, I needed that. Yeah. But I needed someone to explain what's going on. I needed someone to tell me, hey, your mom is going above and beyond. Try and make it easier for her. Your sisters are trying their best to, fill in a gap or try to show you that you're not missing anything. Try to understand and try to be more reasonable. I mean, being a kid, being reasonable is not associated with kids, but they need to know that the world has their back, right? Your parents are there. Try to make it easy. I mean, I wish I made it easier for my mom. Honestly, there are tons of things I did, tons of things I said to her, tons of things I thought that during that time I wish I never did, because nishakuwa mkubwa na realized what was going on and what she was trying to do. I wish that those people who are going through it right now know that their moms, their sisters, their elder brothers, their uncles are doing a huge job for someone that left, someone that left a huge gap in their lives, and they should try and understand and try to grasp as much knowledge as they can kipindi hicho wanapokuwa, kwa sababu honestly ukishakuwa mtu mzima saizi, ni ushauri utaupewa ni kwamba you need to unpack, you need to unwind, and you need to understand before you commit to another generation. You start creating another generation. But the people who really need that information, who really need to be told on that they need to take care of themselves better, or like understand what their parents are going through, is the kids right now. And I wish this episode would be like, they would be listening to it, because this episode is like more watu wazima wanasikiza, but the kids that are going through it, or if you're a brother to a younger brother, try and be as there as possible, and that's it from my side.
And I would like to say something. Yeah, somebody before Nadia winds up, it's kuna mtu aliniambia kitu. You talked about your mom and the things you put her through. Kuna mtu aliniambia kitu because of corona sijafanya mpaka sasa hivi. Tulikuwa tunaongea naye, and then nilikuwa naongea naye pia about some of the things I made my mom go through, and as a boy growing up na vitu kama hivyo. Akamwambia, Michael, if this is what you can do, go to your mom. Mamangu yuko Morogoro. Kwa kanaambia washa gari, nenda Morogoro. Just sit her down and just say, I'm sorry. Don't explain anything. Just say, Mom, I turned out all right. I turned out great. Najua kazi uliyofanya. I wish kuna vitu nisingevifanya huko nyuma, but I want you to know kwamba I apologize for all the things I put you through. I am sorry. And mothers being mothers, I'm sure I already see the reaction itakokuwa. Lakini for me, it was how she said it. And then it hit me kwamba, I've actually never done that, but that is something that I should do. And this is something for everybody who's listening. Kupata baraka za wazazi wetu. This is one of the things that maybe you should do. You should think about it, man, as well.
Yeah,
you'll be surprised.
I've spoken to my mom a couple of times. I've shown gratitude, and sometimes I would say something really emotional, and she would be like, I didn't know you have that emotional side too. And I'm like, I should have shown this way earlier in my life, right? I wish I had this emotional intelligence when I was younger. I had the IQ, but the emotional intelligence and everything that came way later, and it came at a difficult time for me. So I would say, I would definitely I would sit my mom down and apologize for everything. But I wish I had this emotional intelligence when I was younger, and that's it.
Man, yeah. If you know better, you do better. We didn't know better back then, man. So it's all good. It's all good, and that is why we're having this kind of talk. Like you say, for the next generation of mono to sikiliza, they should know kwamba dunia haiishi. Life goes on, and you have to find a way to make it. Nadia, what is one thing that you'd like people to take from today's episode?
I think one thing to take is fathers are important. Okay, we can acknowledge that. But fathers are flawed. Hopefully everyone who's listening is going to be a better father. And so I know we put parents on a pedestal a lot, especially as children. And sometimes we continue to put them on a pedestal even once we are adults. I think what I want people to take away from the session, one is that no one is on a pedestal. Parents mess up. Sometimes they are also just trying to find their way around. They're flawed human beings. That's one. So that once we look at it from that angle, then we become able to accept their flaws and their blunders. Two, acknowledge your anger or your emotions or your fear or your sadness. Acknowledge it. Whatever emotion that you're feeling when it comes to losing a parent, either from them either walking out or from them just disappearing from your life, acknowledge the emotions that situation or that action has caused. We tend to ignore our emotions, and sometimes we okay, I don't need to. Why should I feel like this? I know to Mongelea, one aspect that, like Frederick, you say you feel indifferent, like there's nothing that you feel about your dad. And Michael, the person you spoke to, akasema, am I weird for not feeling anything that this person has passed away? But it's also true for people who their parents or their father walked out, but they still feel very strongly. When something happens to them, they strongly feel their emotions are quite strong towards this parent whom in all aspects they should not feel anything toward. And all of it is valid. The indifference, the not feeling anything, and the feeling towards this parent who walked out or who is absent, all of it is valid. So acknowledge your emotions. I think is the second takeaway for me. It's one, they're not superheroes, even though as children we love to think of our parents as such. They're not. They're flawed human beings who are, just like any of us. They can commit sins and errors and they're imperfect. Now, Pia, we need to start acknowledging our emotions more, I think. And if there's any parents listening, we need to learn how to be emotionally intelligent parents. It's not enough to just be a present parent. You need to be an emotionally intelligent present parent, because that's one way that will help our children navigate and grow into emotionally intelligent human beings too. So yeah, those are my takeaways.
Thank you, Ricky. Thank you for doing this, man. Thank you sana for doing this. And we appreciate you because opening up na vitu kama hivi, najua sio rahisi, it takes a lot of courage. But thank you for doing this with us today.
No worries, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we appreciate that. And again, kama unataka umependa ushauri wa Nadia, you feel like you need some professional conversations, unaweza kumpata kupitia contact ya Twitter na Instagram ambao ni Mind Matters TZ. Mind Matters TZ. Ukiingia pale moja kwa moja utaenda kwenye bio yake, you get the link, itakupeleka mpaka kwenye website. As for us, we are on Twitter and Instagram @MenThePodcast. Mi naitwa Michael Baruti, so I think from both me and Nadia, till next time, man, thank you for listening. Ricky, stay safe, stay corona-free, man. And by the way, shout out to the podcast, my guy.
Hey, man. Hey, I just started speaking about football. I got it from my dad. But yeah, I started talking about football on my podcast. It's tough, man. Following through what you're doing, I thought it was easy, but it's tough doing a podcast. But I had fun.
Oh, dope, man. The name of your football is Mad About Football. The name of your podcast is Mad About Football.
Yep, Mad About Football. It's like it's gonna be on Spotify, Audio Mark for those who don't have Spotify. So it's gonna be out there.
Yeah, so Mad About Football. Ricky has his own podcast, anaambiwa ana sound kama mimi, so he should feel good about it. But
apparently, some girls are complaining that tutachanganya today with this podcast, but fingers crossed that we don't sound too much alike.
I pray too. So shout out for you and your podcast, man. I'm a big football fan, so obviously I'm listening. So and it's weird hearing you speak in Swahili throughout. But hey,
man, sio rahisi but Mungu anasaidia.
Thank you for doing this, and good luck on your podcast. We'll be watching you. Nadia, thank you for coming through as always, man.
Thanks,
All right,
Frederick.
boss.
I'm waiting for your insights on what your father says the football.
Oh yeah. But I mean, my sister, literally, my sister is at KSMC Moshi, so she's close by. So I'm gonna tell her like, yo, connect me to Dad, and I got a question to ask him. But she's probably gonna listen to this episode, and she's gonna be wild out to this episode. So yeah, thanks for making me do this, anyways.
Yeah, thanks, man. Till next time, we are
Men, the podcast.